Hello guys, and welcome back to another class of our course about the complete introduction to Java programming. So in the past few classes we talked about plenty of things such as the if function, and we talked about different statements such as the if statement, the if-else statement, and finally the else statement. And what I wanted to do today is basically talk about something that is pretty important as well, and that is the basics of data inside of Java. So basically it's important not only in Java but in all programming languages, and it's a way to store data. So instead of having a lot of variables, basically you can have only one variable where you will store, well, it's not really a variable, it's called an array, but basically you will store absolutely all your variables inside of it. So, well, not all of your variables, but let's say, for example, well, a quick example with a string. Let's say you have a car. So you have a type of car, and inside of this type of car, you want to store all the different colors that this car has. So basically you can create an array that will store all the colors of that car. And you can do this for all your different cars. And basically store different colors inside of it. So this is a way that you can use it. Once again, this is just a basic example. So what we're going to do today is pretty simple. We're going to learn how to use arrays for doubles, so that's a data type, and as well as for numbers. So, well, for doubles and for strings, sorry. So let's do it. So you'll see it's not that complicated. So basically it works pretty much as variables when you want to create an array. So let's say we want to create a variable. So how exactly we'll create a variable? Pretty simple. First thing that we are going to do is simply write down the name of the variable, the data type of the variable. So in this case, it's double, and then the name of the variable. So since we're going to work with data, let's call our variable data. And then after that, what we're going to do is pretty simple, is just give a value to our data. So we can give him the number 1 value. So as you can see, pretty simple. This is how we create our, this is how we create a variable. Now the next step is creating, well, a lot of variables. So let's say I want to store all my variables that I have inside of only one array. So is it possible? Yes, of course it's possible. So just for you guys to understand what an array would look like, it looks something like this. So basically it's just a list of different variables. So let's say this is a variable and it contains 6 elements. So number 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but it contains 6 elements in total. So as you can see, pretty simple to create, and basically this is what an array looks like. So it's just elements that are together. And what you will do, you will give a number, well, you will give a value to each position. So for the position 0, the number will be 1. For the position 1, the number will be 2, etc., etc. So as you can see, it's pretty simple to understand. Now next thing, let's say I want to create an array with my variable. So how exactly I will do this? So pretty simple. What I need to do right now is simply add those parentheses right there. So now that I have those parentheses, what does it mean? It means I want to create a double array. So an array that will contain the double data type, and its name will be data. So now that I have it, I will simply write down this. So I want to create a new double array that contains, in this case, let's say 3 elements. We don't want to create something that is too huge because it's going to be too long to make. All right, so right now that we have all this, what we'll do is simply add elements to our array. So let's say I want to add, in this case, I need to add 3 elements. Let's say I want to create those elements. How exactly I will proceed? So basically those elements are all variables. So I don't necessarily need to write down the data type of each of those variables. So what I can do is simply write down, in this case, data. So the name of my array, write down the position of the number that I'm going to write. So basically position is 0, which would be our first number. And then give to this position a value. So let's say the value will be 1.5. Then for the position number 1, data, in this case, let's say it's going to be position 1. I will give him the value 3.34. And for the position number 2, which in reality is position number 3, I'm going to give it the value of 5. Here we go. So this is our array. So basically what our array looks like, let me just type it down. Our array looks something like this. So 3.34 and finally 5. So this is what our array looks like. So this is the number 0, this is the number 1, and this is the number 2. So now that I want to, little problem, and this is the number 2. Now that I want to, let's say, print something, if I want to print the number 0, I will be able to print this. If I want to print the number 1, I will print this. If I want to print the number 2, I will print this. So our array contains 3 values. Now let's say I want to create one more value. So adding a 4th value. What's going to happen? So automatically I will have a problem, because once again this array contains only 3 values. So 1, 2, 3. I can't add another value or a more values. So if I try to print it, which I will do right here. Here we go. What's going to happen is pretty simple. I want to print the data. And I want to print number 3. What's going to happen is pretty simple. We are going to receive an error message because it's not possible to print it, because this array contains only 3 values. It doesn't make sense. If we want to make it work, we should have 4 values inside of it. And now it will work properly. So as you can see, it's pretty simple to understand, and basically the elements inside of the array works pretty much as variables. So what I mean by works pretty much as variables, so I can create another random variable. So let's say I create a variable that will be a double, and let's call it, I don't know, let's call it A. And what exactly will be inside of this variable? So it's pretty simple. We're going to have the number 0 of the array plus the number 2 of the array. So as you can see, our array data, and we want the number 2 of that array. And let's say I want to print A. Here we go. So what's going to happen? The addition will automatically be made, because once again, what I did is I additioned, in this case, 1.5 plus, in this case, 5. Yeah, 5. So basically, it works pretty much as variables. If I create something that is a little bit more complicated, even if I create, let's say I work with an if function, and I want to create something, more complicated, it's going to work as well. So let's do it just for the purpose of practicing. And at the same time, we're going to work with our array that we have just created. So let's do it right there. I'll keep my variable. Yeah, I'll delete it. I don't need it anymore. I don't need this anymore. All right, great. So let's say we create a basic if function. And what I want to test, something pretty simple. Let's say I want to test if data 0. So basically the number 0 of the array is greater than the number 2. So I'll just write it down. So basically data, in this case, little problem. Data 0 is greater than data number 2. Let's do it like this. So if it's greater, what I want to do is print system.out.println. What exactly I want to print? I want to print data 0 plus is greater than plus data 2. So what exactly this means, pretty simple. So I don't know if I talked about it in the course. So if you want, for example, to, when you print something, if you want, for example, to print other elements, so let's say, for example, I want to print data 0, which would be 1.5 is greater than, in this case, 5. That doesn't make sense. If I want to be able to print this, I can simply write down data 0 is greater than data 2, and it will automatically adapt. So else, otherwise, If it's not the case, I will retake my function right there. Data2 is greater than data0. Great, so right now we have everything that we need. What we can do to test our function, so it's pretty simple. Here we have our if function. Up there we have our arrays. So basically what's gonna happen, it will test the data0, which is the number 0 of our array, with the number 2. So if we run the function, it should return us is greater than, well, it's data2 is greater than 1.5, which makes a lot of sense. So basically this can also work for strings. So in the case that I want to create a string array, I'm able to do this. So how exactly I create a string array? It's pretty simple. I simply write down string, and it works pretty much the same way. So data2, and in this case I simply write down new and string, and same thing. So basically how many elements I want inside of my array. Let's say I want 2 elements, and it will work pretty much the same way. So let's say I will have my data, in this case data2, the number 0 will be equal to, let's say, pizza, and for the number 1, let's say it's going to be equal to burger. So right now what our array looks like, it looks like pizza and burger. So pretty simple. I have my data type at first, which is string. Then I have my the name of my array right there, which is data2. Then I simply write down new string, and here I can write everything down. It should work properly. So pretty simple. And then after that I can use it for my if functions and can use it whenever I need it. So this is one of the basic ways of storing data inside of Java. As you can see, it's pretty simple to understand, pretty simple to use, and basically works pretty much as a variable, but it's just to make your code a little bit more organized, if we can say it this way. And it's easier to find things with the use of arrays. So let's say, for example, I have a car and I want to store all the colors of that car inside of an array. It's way more useful to use an array in that case than just store it inside of variables. So this is how it works. So that's it for this class, guys, and see you all in our next class.